What's your name and where you from?
My name is Hutch and I'm from Brighton.
Talk to me about what life was like growing up in Brighton.
Brighton's a funny place, man. I feel like there's a lot of pockets of subculture in Brighton. Growing up, I met pretty much every type of person, I think, which is cool because it opens your brain up to lots of different creative stuff or other walks of life and opinions on the world and whatever, but it's still quite a small place. So it feels like a bit of a classic seaside town, but on a city scale because it's a big party town. So there's sort of different to like Margate or places like that. It never sleeps.
Yeah,
it's,
yeah.
it's always partying.
What was it like at home?
At home, so I lived with my mum and dad, and then I spent a lot of time with my nan. From when I was a baby up until when I left home, and it was good, man. I was heavily influenced by my nan growing up. She was sort of a key figure. She did all the little bits like school runs and we'd eat food. She was a mad chef. She used to run a restaurant back in France before she moved to Brighton. And yeah, she was a foster carer. So I grew up with like lots of different guys and girls when I was younger, which was cool because I didn't really have that many friends from school, and in that sort of environment, friends weren't coming to my house and I wasn't really hanging out. I've always felt like a little bit on the edge of the social circles, as it were. So I felt proper close to those guys, and some still now. But yeah, I left home quite early because I was getting into situations where I felt like I didn't want to hand over like a burden of worry to my mum or my nan, and I felt things that I didn't really understand. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I left quite young. But yeah, I feel like I'm talking a lot.
No, that's good. What were some of those things that you got yourself involved in that you considered a burden?
Well, I think when I was young, it was just dumb stuff. I used to get in trouble for stupid stuff. In school, I was always sort of labelled a disruptive kid, or like, I'm dyslexic and I'm ADHD, so I didn't like reading or writing, ironically, because I love words. I just can't write them on a page very well. And I think that instilled in me a slight problem with authority. And yeah, when I was outside of school, I was just with my friends and we'd just get up to nuisance, getting in trouble, doing silly stuff that you do. You know what I mean? Like shoplifting, painting walls, and yeah, just doing a standard thing, which I think it kind of snowballed into, again, like I mentioned in Brighton, it's easy to meet a lot of different types of sort of chaotic people, maybe. Quite a contained space. So I came into close contact with drugs from a young age. And that sort of snowballed into progressing into different drugs that I sort of swore that I would never do. But the situation presented itself. And I was very impressionable. I think because I had a lot of years where I felt like I didn't fit in or I didn't find my tribe. I was like yearning for that, I guess, like big brother or unit outside of the household where I didn't feel shame or like I was, disappointing anyone or whatever it might be. So that lands you in all manner of different types of circles, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, because I was going to ask you, where do you think it all stemmed from? So you think it was, down to that?
Yeah, probably a lack of I didn't have the tools to communicate how I was feeling, basically, all throughout school. And I think there's a sort of systemic thing where we are told to sort of lift up, chin up, and deal with our emotions without, inwardly, without actually talking about it. And I never really had a way of communicating. My emotions would come out in different ways, whether it's anger or sadness or even confusion or even excitement, it would just bubble up into, I would lash out or I would have little explosions and it would come out in that way. And then I think, again, that made me feel slightly isolated within that. And there were things I didn't really understand from when I was a kid. I got bullied. I had certain situations happen which affected my self-worth, and confused me, and I blamed the wrong people for that stuff. And again, I was just yearning for a tribe. And I'd also got into a situation where I'd met some older people when I was 15, and I was in a sort of cycle of being in debt to these older people, and in situations that I felt out of my control. And I also looked at these people like they were my older brother type thing. And yeah, it spiraled. So I got sober when I was 20, just before I turned 21. And I had been in and out of like recovery meetings, like 12-step programs and CA and, you know, anonymous stuff from the age of 17. I got ushered there by some older friends who found out that I was on a certain path, which I was trying to keep secret, but I wasn't very good at that. I was trying to just keep it hidden and crack on.
Yeah.
But they ushered me to one of these meetings. So I was sort of in and out of those meetings for a good 4 years until I actually worked the program and got sober and had the support that I needed. And I'll be honest, that was the first time where I realised all the feelings I was running from. Like all the stuff I was just explaining, like the last thing I wanted to do was sit with my thoughts and my feelings and process stuff. But when I got sober, it was the first time that my mind was clear, and I felt like I could approach things head on and have those tough conversations that I needed to have and open up about things. You know, in those 4 years where it was very rocky, I lost a few friends to suicide and addiction, and I can see now that that was a sort of outcome of not being able to navigate what it is you're going through, or what you're feeling, or how to talk to someone. I'm lucky I've got the luxury of an outlet, which is writing lyrics, and I've always done that. That's always been my little sort of safety bubble. But yeah, since then, I mean, it's an ongoing sort of case by case learning with the days, but it's nice.
I wanted to ask, because I know you mentioned it earlier, how did you end up getting into drug addictions and using drugs? And
I was introduced to drugs by an older friend. We used to just smoke weed together. I was about 11, 12. We used to go to a park in Brighton. I'd smoke weed with a few other older friends, drink vodka and all of that stuff. And again, it was sort of tied in with the music I was listening to. I was heavy into drum and bass and jungle music and the sort of rave scene and whatever. Even from a young age, I was just fascinated with it. Truthfully, I disconnected from my family from quite a young age due to, you know, it would really stress me out, the thought of them knowing what I was getting into and the trouble I was getting into. So it's easier for me to disconnect. And luckily, since getting sober, we've, you know, part of that process was really making amends and rectifying those relationships. And now it's, you know, everything. Like, I'm very grateful for that. But yeah, it was confusing. It was like not having the mental capacity to process what it is that I'm going through, but also living through a bit of a nightmare, you know? Remember seeing someone having a heart attack who I'd been with for a few days, and they ended up having a heart attack in the middle of the road. And I, you know, at the time it was sort of almost shocking, but to be expected. Like, you're sort of waiting for that sort of thing to happen. And yeah, like in the chaos of it all, I ran down to Brighton Station to grab a defibrillator, and I ran back up the road to see if I could use it. Not that I have any idea what that is. And by the time I got back up, the ambulance was already there. And I haven't spoke to that guy again. And like other things, you know, people overdosing and yeah, young people taking their life too early due to, you know, a complete override of stimulants and lack of sort of love for yourself, you know.
How does it make you feel? Obviously, being in a similar environment with certain people, taking the same substances that they're taking, but you've got out of it, and others have lost their lives.
Yeah, that's one I think about quite a lot. I think, on a general sense, there were younger people who weren't using those substances, who I you know, was friends with, that had taken their own lives when I was about 17, 18. There were 2 guys who passed away through suicide, and there's a sort of selfishly an anger attached to it. It sort of feels like, why am I able to move on with this stuff? And I guess it's as simple as, why am I still here and you're not? And also, I think when you experience that young, it desensitizes death, the idea of death to you. You know, like when I've struggled, I've had, you know, my bad times in it. When I haven't wanted to be here anymore, the idea of that feels a lot less challenging because you've already witnessed it, and that's so twisted in itself. But it's a weird one. I just wish people knew that they were loved more and could hear, because the love is always there, but it's sometimes very hard to hear it. Yeah.
Talk to me about the difference between how you perceived yourself back then to how you perceive yourself now.
Nowadays, the main difference is, first off, I'm clear-headed, and I have to practice simple rituals of gratitude. Being grateful is one of the main things. I think that it's easy to get caught up in feeling resentment or feeling angry or blaming everybody else for certain things that happen in your life. But when you simplify it, for me, I have to find the small things that I can be grateful for every day. And also, like the self-talk thing, actively try and show myself love on a day-to-day basis in times where I'm struggling, or like imposter syndrome, for example. Tell yourself that you're meant to be in the room, tell yourself that you're supposed to be there. I think, you know, when I was younger, back then, truthfully, I believed I was supposed to be in those spaces that I ended up in. That was like it was sort of just carried on. Again, snowballed, and I think, I had been very harsh on myself. Maybe, I didn't have those tools, the simple tools of like gratitude and nurturing relationships, and also cutting certain things out of your life and cutting certain people out of your life. I was always around people. I always had to be social, and in the thick of it, I could never sit by myself. And nowadays, I spend a lot of time in my own company, by myself or with my partner and my dog, and I prefer it that way. You know. Yeah.
What keeps you hopeful today?
My future, I think, and again, the simple things. Going on a big walk in nature, practicing that positive self-talk keeps me hopeful. Believing in something, having faith in something, whether or not that's God or whatever it might be, there's something that I choose to believe in. As you know, I think it's uplifting, and it simplifies things for me, because there's a lot of beauty in the world that you can't really see if you're trying to overanalyze everything. So yeah, faith in whatever that means, nature, and just acknowledging your progress.